When my beloved wife Eleanor passed away, my son Garrett said words that would haunt me forever. "Dad, you can't bring Mom back, and Brittany's birthday only happens once a year." Those words didn't just hit me like a slap. They shattered something deep inside my soul, something I didn't even know could break. The next morning, as if those cruel words had never left his lips, he came to me with his hand outstretched, asking for money like he always did. That moment, that single devastating moment, became my awakening. It was my chance to finally honor the woman who gave everything for our family, and I seized it with both hands. But before we dive into this heart-wrenching tale of betrayal, love, and justice, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to take you on an emotional roller coaster that you'll never forget. And in the comments below, tell me where you're watching from. Are you in New York, California, Texas? I love connecting with viewers from all across this beautiful country. Your support means everything to me, and trust me, you're going to want to be part of this community after you hear what happens next. Let me paint you a picture of that morning, the morning that changed everything. It was October 15th, 2023, at exactly 8:30 a.m. I remember because I kept checking the antique grandfather clock in our hallway, the one Eleanor had found at an estate sale in Burlington 23 years ago. My hands were trembling, not from old age, mind you. I'm only 62. But from the weight of what I was about to do. Eleanor's favorite coffee mug sat on our granite kitchen counter, the one with the faded roses that she'd bought during our honeymoon in Savannah. There was still a faint trace of her lipstick on the rim, Revlon's Berry Kiss, the same shade she'd worn for 38 years of marriage. The kitchen felt impossibly empty without her gentle humming, the way she'd move around making breakfast while planning her day at the community garden. I adjusted my black tie for the third time and dialed Garrett's number. 4 long rings echoed in my ear, each one stretching like an eternity. Then his voice, groggy, irritated, like I was interrupting something important. "Yeah?" That's all he said. Not "Hi, Dad," or "How are you holding up?" Just, "Yeah?" "Son," I said, straightening my shoulders and trying to sound stronger than I felt. "It's your father. Mom's funeral starts at 11:30 this morning." The background noise that came through that phone still haunts me. Loud music, some kind of electronic dance music that sounded like a nightclub, laughter, multiple voices. And then I heard her. Brittany's voice, shrill and demanding, something about centerpieces and whether the caterers had arrived. Garrett cleared his throat, and I could practically hear him trying to find the right words to break his mother's heart one final time. "Dad, listen. I told you yesterday. Brittany's birthday party is tonight. We've been planning this thing for months. The venue, the band, the ice sculpture. Everything's already paid for." Ice sculpture. An ice sculpture was more important than his mother's funeral. The words hit me like ice water in my veins. My grip tightened on that old rotary phone. Yes, we still had one. Eleanor loved vintage things, until my knuckles went white. "Garrett," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "your mother's funeral is today. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event." What he said next, God help me, I'll never forget those words as long as I live. "Look, Dad, Mom's not coming back, right? But my wife's birthday only happens once a year. We've got 200 people coming, the caterers are setting up as we speak. The live band cost us $8,000. I mean, Mom raised me for 35 years and I appreciate everything she did, I really do. But I can't just abandon Brittany on her special day. You understand, right? Family comes first. Family comes first." He actually said that. As if Eleanor, the woman who worked double shifts at the textile factory to pay for his college, who sold her grandmother's jewelry to cover his wedding expenses, who gave up her dream of becoming a teacher so she could support his ambitions. As if she wasn't family. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like an angry bee. I sat there motionless for exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds, staring at Eleanor's reading glasses beside the phone. They were wire-rimmed, delicate things that made her look scholarly. She'd been reading Pride and Prejudice, for the fourth time, her bookmark still tucked into chapter 12. The kitchen clock showed 8:47 a.m. Sunlight streamed through the windows she'd cleaned just last week, casting shadows across the breakfast table where we'd shared over 13,000 meals together. My wedding ring, a simple gold band she'd picked out at Johnson's Jewelry downtown, caught that morning light and threw tiny rainbows across the wall. I found the funeral program on the counter where I'd left it the night before. Garrett's name was listed as a pallbearer, right there in elegant script under honorary bearers. My hand shook as I took out my blue Bic pen and scratched his name out with deliberate, angry strokes. Each scratch felt like a knife through my heart, but also like justice being served. The funeral was everything Eleanor deserved, and nothing like what she'd hoped for. Golden Hills Cemetery sits on a rolling hillside overlooking the Susquehanna River, where Eleanor and I used to walk every Sunday after church. The autumn leaves were in full display, reds and golds and oranges that Eleanor would have loved. She always said October was God's way of showing off. 23 people came to honor my wife of 38 years. 23. Not the hundreds who should have been there celebrating the life of a woman who volunteered at the soup kitchen every Thanksgiving, who organized the church's annual coat drive, who never said a harsh word about anyone, not even the neighbors who let their dog dig up her prized begonias. Patricia, Eleanor's younger sister, kept scanning the crowd with worried eyes. "Where's Garrett?" she asked me 3 different times, her voice getting more concerned each time. "I don't see him anywhere. Is he running late?" I'd practiced my response during the sleepless hours before dawn. "He had important commitments," I said, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. The truth was there, just beneath the surface, but I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. Not yet. Not while Eleanor's casket sat before us, covered in the white daisies she'd loved more than roses. I stood alone beside that casket, surrounded by Eleanor's garden club friends and our elderly neighbors from Maple Street. The empty space where Garrett should have been felt enormous, like a black hole sucking all the warmth out of the October sunshine. Mrs. Henderson, who lived 2 houses down and had known Garrett since he was in diapers, whispered to her husband just loud enough for me to hear. She was so proud of that boy, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Always talking about his success, his beautiful house, his important job. Where could he be? I nodded and smiled and accepted condolences like a man in a dream. But inside, something was crystallizing. Something hard and cold and absolutely clear. Eleanor had defended Garrett until her last breath, making excuses when he missed her chemotherapy appointments, when he forgot her birthday, when he only called to ask for money. "He's just busy with his new life," she'd say, sitting in that hospital bed with IV tubes in her arm. "Young couples need their space. We raised him to be independent, didn't we?" The pastor, Reverend Matthews, spoke beautifully about family bonds and eternal love, about how the connections we forge in life transcend death itself. I watched dirt fall onto polished mahogany, each shovelful burying not just Eleanor, but every illusion I'd ever had about our son. Driving home alone in Eleanor's little silver Honda Civic, she'd always insisted we take her car instead of my pickup truck because it was better for the environment. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. The passenger seat stretched empty beside me, and I could almost hear her voice telling me to turn down the radio, to drive more slowly, to stop at Morrison's Market for milk. Our street looked exactly the same. Neat lawns, painted mailboxes, the American flag hanging from the Petersons' front porch. The life Eleanor and I had built together over 4 decades, brick by brick, dream by dream. I pulled into our driveway and sat for a long moment, gathering the strength to face the emptiness inside. The front door key turned with its familiar click. I hung my keys on the little wooden hook Eleanor had installed beside the door, part of her endless campaign to keep me organized. The house settled around me with creaks and sighs, 40 years of memories embedded in every floorboard. I loosened my black tie and sank into my leather armchair, the brown one Eleanor always said clashed with her floral curtains. She'd wanted to redecorate for years, but I'd always been too busy building the business, too focused on providing for our family's future. Now those curtains would stay forever, the last thing she'd chosen for our home. Our wedding photo smiled from the mantelpiece. Eleanor at 24, radiant in her grandmother's ivory lace dress. We'd married right here in Millbrook, promised each other everything we had to give. Looking at that photo, I realized I'd delivered on that promise. Maybe too well. The memories came flooding back like a broken dam. Garrett taking his first steps across this very living room, chubby hands reached for Eleanor's outstretched arms. Birthday parties with handmade decorations because we couldn't afford store-bought. Eleanor working 16-hour days at the factory while I got Foster construction off the ground, never complaining when we ate spaghetti and butter for dinner 3 nights running. "We're building Garrett's future," she'd whisper after he'd fallen asleep between us in our bed, too young for his own room in our tiny starter apartment. Everything we sacrifice now is an investment in his dreams. I found her Bible on the nightstand, leather-bound and worn soft from decades of reading. Bookmarks still marked her favorite psalms, little scraps of paper with her handwriting on them. One note fell to the floor as I picked up the book, and my hands shook as I read her careful script. "My dearest Fletcher, please don't let Garrett forget us when we're gone. We gave him everything we had to give. I pray it was enough to teach him love. All my devotion, E." Eleanor had always been more intuitive than me. She'd seen something I'd refused to acknowledge, some darkness in our son that I'd explained away as ambition, as the natural selfishness of youth. But she'd known. Deep down, she'd known. In our bedroom closet, hidden behind her winter coats that still smelled like her lavender perfume, I discovered the box she'd never shown me. Eleanor's secret treasure trove of motherhood. Every report card Garrett had ever received from kindergarten through his MBA. Every school photo, every certificate, every small achievement carefully preserved and labeled with her loving comments. "So proud of our brilliant boy," she'd written on his 3rd grade spelling bee certificate. "Future president," she'd noted on his high school student council photo. "My heart is full," appeared on his college graduation announcement, the graduation we'd paid for with Eleanor's overtime hours and my weekend construction jobs. The total cost of Garrett's education, $247,000. I know because I kept every receipt, every loan document, every canceled check. $247,000 earned with calloused hands and Eleanor's aching feet, standing on factory floors and climbing construction scaffolding. I pulled out my calculator, an old Texas Instruments model that had served me for 20 years, and started adding. The numbers told a story I'd never wanted to see clearly. College tuition, $247,000 graduate school that he never finished, $52,000, his first car, $28,000, the down payment on his house, $380,000, his wedding to Brittany, $85,000, emergency loans over the years, $94,000 total, $886,000, nearly $1 million of our lives, handed over with love and hope and the belief that we were investing in our son's future. Instead, we'd been funding his entitlement. My own father had been a different kind of man entirely, hard as railroad steel, with hands like leather and a heart that didn't believe in handouts. When I turned 18, he shook my hand and said, "Son, you've got everything you need right here," pointing to his head, "and right here," pointing to his heart. "The rest is up to you." I'd resented his coldness then, envied friends whose fathers helped them through college or set them up in business. Now, sitting in my empty house with Eleanor's memory surrounding me like a shroud, I wondered if the old man had been right all along. Eleanor's coffee mug still sat in the dishwasher and I couldn't bring myself to wash it. Her romance novel lay open on her nightstand, a bookmark waiting for eyes that would never read another page. Get well cards from friends covered the kitchen counter, people who'd cared more about her final months than her own son. The darkness fell outside like a curtain, and I didn't bother turning on the lights. Around 10 o'clock, a car pulled into my driveway. I could see headlights sweeping across the living room wall, engine idling for several minutes. I didn't get up to check. If Garrett wanted to talk, he knew where to find me. Eventually, the engine revved and drove away into the night. At 6 a.m. I sat at my mahogany desk with file folders spread in precise rows. Eleanor's methodical nature had rubbed off on me over the years. Everything labeled, everything in its place. Garrett education, Garrett house, Garrett wedding. Each folder told part of the story, but together they revealed the whole devastating truth. The reading glasses Eleanor had bought me last Christmas reflected my computer screen as I pulled up 15 years of bank records. Transfer to Garrett, loan to Garrett emergency, wire to Garrett account. The pattern was unmistakable, unrelenting. I'd kept Eleanor's secret notebook, the one where she documented every sacrifice we'd made for our son. Her handwriting grew shakier as the cancer progressed, but her love never wavered. Anniversary dinner canceled. Needed $7,000 for Garrett's car repair. Postponed my mammogram appointment. Garrett's wedding costs higher than expected. Bought generic groceries this month. Sent Garrett money for Brittany's birthday surprise. Her final entry, dated just 2 weeks before she died, cut me to the bone. We gave Garrett everything we had to give. I pray he remembers us with love when we're gone. I worry we've created a stranger. I remembered the last time I'd called Garrett a family business last Christmas when we were all still pretending everything was fine. He'd nodded approvingly, as if he'd built Foster construction beside me instead of walking into a ready-made position with a corner office and a salary he hadn't earned. Brittany had smiled and made comments about family legacy and future investments, already planning how to spend profits I'd earned with 40 years of labor. My business instincts, honed by decades of hard decisions, finally kicked in. This wasn't grief anymore. This was a problem requiring a solution. I'd been emotional too long, making excuses for behavior that Eleanor had worried about in private. "Maybe we're doing too much for him, Fletcher," she'd whispered one night after Garrett's latest financial emergency. "Maybe we're not helping him grow into the man we raised him to be." I stood up from the desk with new resolve, feeling something harder than grief settling in my chest like concrete. Looking at Eleanor's photograph on the corner of my desk, I spoke aloud for the first time since her funeral. "You are right to worry, my love, but it's not too late to make this right." The phone rang at exactly 9:15 a.m. Garrett's name lit up the caller ID like a neon sign. I stared at it for 4 rings before answering, already knowing what this call would bring. "Hey, Dad." Garrett's voice carried that familiar cheerful tone, the one he'd perfected over the years when he needed something. "Hope you're doing okay after yesterday." I noticed he didn't mention the funeral specifically, didn't ask how I was coping with burying the woman we'd both supposedly loved. "I'm managing," I said, keeping my voice steady while staring at the financial documents scattered across my desk. "Good, good. Listen, Dad, I'm calling because we need to cover some unexpected costs from Brittany's party. It went absolutely amazing. I mean, people are still talking about it. You should have seen the ice sculpture. It was incredible. But we kind of went overboard, and you know how it is with these special occasions." In the background, I could hear Brittany's voice. "Tell him about the photographer." "Yeah, so we hired this celebrity photographer from Philadelphia, got this incredible live band. They were featured in Modern Bride magazine. Took everyone to that new steakhouse that just opened downtown. And the jewelry. Dad, you should have seen Brittany's face when I gave her those diamond earrings. Priceless." He paused, waiting for my usual enthusiastic response about Brittany's happiness. When it didn't come, he continued, "But now the credit card bills are coming in, and we're looking at about $23,000 in immediate payments. So can you just wire it to my account today? Brittany's really stressed about the bills, and you know how she gets when she's worried about money." $23,000 for a birthday party, while his mother lay in the ground with dirt on her casket. The moment stretched between us like a chasm. I looked at Eleanor's photograph, then at the neat columns of numbers documenting Garrett's total cost to our marriage. No. Silence. Complete, total silence for about 10 seconds. "What do you mean, no?" Dad, is there a problem with the bank? I can call them if... No, Garrett. I won't be giving you any more money. The cheerful mask slipped from his voice like paint peeling off old wood. Are you seriously telling me no right now? After everything we've been through this week? Dad, I know you're upset about Mom, but taking it out on us isn't going to bring her back. Everything we've been through. As if he'd suffered through Eleanor's funeral instead of throwing a party. You're 35 years old, Garrett, so what does that have to do with helping your son out of a tight spot? It's not like you can't afford it. The business is doing great. The house is paid off. What else are you going to do with the money? Brittany's voice escalated in the background. Tell him we already spent it. Tell him about the contracts. I said no. The words felt strange in my mouth, foreign after 35 years of automatic yes to every request. This is unbelievable. Garrett's voice turned cold, calculating. Mom just died and you're being petty about money? She'd want you to help us, Dad. She always said family comes first. The manipulation was so casual, so practiced, like a song he'd sung 1,000 times before. How many times had he played this card? How many times had Eleanor and I folded because he invoked family loyalty? Your mother wanted you at her funeral, Garrett. His breathing grew harsh, audible through the phone. Fine, fine. We'll figure this out ourselves. Max out more credit cards, borrow from Brittany's parents, sell some stuff, whatever it takes. But don't expect us to come around much anymore if this is how you're going to be. What's the point of having family if they won't help when you need them? The threat hung in the air like smoke. For 35 years, it had worked perfectly. Garrett's presence as a reward for Fletcher's money, his absence as punishment for saying no. I understand, I said calmly. You... what? I understand. Take care, Garrett. I hung up before he could respond. The phone sat silent on my desk, no longer an instrument of manipulation. For the first time in decades, I'd ended a conversation with my son on my terms. I opened my laptop and scrolled through Foster Construction's employee files until I found Garrett's photo on the management page. He was smiling confidently in a navy suit I'd bought him for his promotion to project manager, a position he'd held for 3 years without managing a single successful project from start to finish. Tomorrow morning, we'd have a different kind of conversation. One conducted in the office where I was the boss, not the father who'd forgotten how to say no. At 7:30 a.m., I walked through Foster Construction's marble lobby 2 hours before Garrett's usual arrival, if you could call 9:45 a.m. usual for someone drawing a management salary. His employee photo hung in the position of honor on our management wall, smiling confidently beside genuine achievers who'd earned their places through competence and dedication. In my corner office, Garrett's personnel files spread across my mahogany desk like evidence at a trial. 8 years of employment records told a story I'd refused to see clearly. Missed deadlines, contractor complaints, inflated expense reports, projects delayed because Garrett prioritized long lunches over site supervision, client relationships damaged by his casual attitude toward commitments and promises. I'd made excuses for all of it. He's still learning, Eleanor would say gently when customers complained. Young people do things differently these days. But these documents revealed a pattern of professional negligence that would have ended any other employee's career within 6 months. At 8:45, I called Sarah Mitchell to my office. As HR director for 12 years, she'd been documenting Garrett's problems with the patience of a saint and the thoroughness of a prosecutor. Mr. Foster, she said quietly, I'll prepare the termination documents immediately. This should have happened years ago. Her lack of surprise told me everything about Garrett's reputation among our employees. While I'd been making excuses, they'd been watching my son coast on nepotism and family name. Security escort? She asked. Yes. Standard protocol for management terminations. I practiced my speech in the office mirror, watching my reflection deliver the words with steady professionalism. No emotion, no explanation beyond what the law required. Garrett would enter this room as my son playing employee and leave as a terminated worker. At 9:47 a.m., Garrett strolled through the lobby 17 minutes late, stopping at the coffee station to joke with Linda from reception about his recovery from Brittany's birthday celebration. His laughter echoed through the office while employees glanced nervously toward my closed door. "Garrett, please come to my office immediately." My voice through the intercom carried unmistakable authority. "Sure thing, Dad," came his casual response from the hallway. "Just let me grab my coffee and check my messages." "Now, Garrett." The silence that followed told me he'd finally heard the change in my tone. His footsteps approached more slowly, heavier than usual. When he opened my door and saw Sarah waiting with a folder of legal documents, his easy smile flickered and died. "What's with the formal setup?" He attempted his usual casual charm, but uncertainty crept into his voice like water through a cracked foundation. I remained seated, hands folded professionally on the desk. "Garrett, your employment with Foster Construction is terminated, effective immediately." His laugh sounded forced, brittle. "Very funny, Dad. What's this really about? The money thing yesterday? Look, I'm sorry about that. We can work it out." I slid the termination papers across the polished surface like a dealer laying down cards. "Please review these documents and sign where indicated." The papers seemed to burn his fingers as he picked them up. His eyes scanned the legal language while his face grew pale as winter sky. "You can't be serious. This is our family business, Dad. I'm your son. This decision is based on your work performance and professional conduct over the past 8 years, I said, my voice remaining level and businesslike. Your position has been eliminated due to restructuring. This is about yesterday's phone call, isn't it? His voice cracked like adolescent boys. Look, I'm sorry about the funeral thing, okay? I made a mistake. Mom would understand. She always said young people make errors in judgment. I pressed the security button under my desk. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. Dad, please. Garrett's composure crumbled as Mike Thompson, our head of security, appeared in the doorway. Mom wouldn't want this. You know she wouldn't tear apart the family over money. Mike stepped forward with professional sympathy. 20 years of friendship meant he understood this was business, not personal vendetta. This is a business decision, Garrett, I said firmly, not a personal one. The humiliation was swift and thorough. Garrett's face flushed red as he realized the entire office was watching their former boss's son being escorted out like a common thief. Co-workers gathered in the hallway, some sympathetic, others relieved that preferential treatment was finally ending. Dad, please think about what this means, came Garrett's final appeal as he clutched his coffee mug and a desktop photo of Brittany. Think about our family. Think about Mom's memory. I met his eyes for the first time during the entire encounter. I have thought about it, Garrett. That's exactly why this is happening. Through my office window, I watched him load his pathetic collection of personal items into his aging Honda Civic, Eleanor's old car that he'd inherited when she got sick. His shoulders shook with rage or grief, I couldn't tell which. When he looked back at the building one final time, I didn't turn away. Sarah returned with the signed paperwork within minutes. All access codes have been changed. His computer access is terminated. I've notified payroll to process his final check. I removed Garrett's photo from the management wall myself, placing it face down in my desk drawer. The empty space looked cleaner somehow, more honest. 20 minutes later, my secretary's voice came through the intercom with barely concealed anxiety. Mr. Foster, someone is here to see you. She didn't wait for permission. Designer heels clicked across the marble lobby like gunshots. Brittany Foster stormed past reception in a cloud of expensive perfume and righteous fury, her perfectly styled blonde hair whipping around her shoulders like a battle flag. Garrett followed behind, looking embarrassed and defeated, a pale shadow of the confident man who'd entered this building an hour earlier. How dare you humiliate Garrett like this? Brittany's voice carried through the open office door as she pointed an accusatory finger at me with 3-inch acrylic nails painted blood red. In front of his employees. In front of people he has to face in this town. I remained seated, not acknowledging her theatrical entrance. She'd always been dramatic, but today her performance reached new heights of entitlement. Garrett positioned himself between his wife and my desk, his embarrassment deepening with every word she spoke. "Brittany, please, let me handle this. This is between me and my father." She ignored him completely, her voice rising to near shriek levels. "Handle it? You've been handling it for years while he treats you like hired help instead of his son. This family business belongs to Garrett too, Alan. Half of everything you've built should be his inheritance." "This is a private workplace," I said calmly, my hands still folded on the desk. "You need to leave immediately." Her face flushed deeper red, clashing horribly with her pink blazer. "We have bills to pay, a lifestyle to maintain. You can't just cut us off like we're strangers." "Mrs. Foster, you are strangers," I replied evenly. "You made that clear yesterday." Garrett's weak attempts at mediation fell on deaf ears. "Dad, please, can we discuss this privately, without all the drama?" "No," Brittany cut him off, whirling to face him with fury. "He needs to hear this. I know about wrongful termination laws, Alan. You can't fire family members out of spite." "Garrett was an at-will employee," I replied. "No severance is required by law or contract. His termination was based on documented performance issues dating back 5 years." Brittany's attacks turned personal with surgical precision. "Eleanor would be ashamed of how you're treating her son. You're having some kind of breakdown, aren't you? Just a bitter old man taking out your grief on the people who love you most." Garrett's face went white as paper. "Brittany, please don't bring Mom into this." My jaw tightened, but I maintained professional composure. This was exactly the reaction I'd expected from her. Manipulation disguised as righteous anger, cruelty wrapped in concern. "Think about what this means for our family." Garrett tried desperately to regain control of the situation. "For future grandchildren, for holidays and birthdays and all the memories we should be making together." The words hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. I looked at this man who shared my DNA but none of my values, this stranger who'd worn my son's face for 35 years. "What family, Garrett?" Brittany's financial threats escalated quickly as she realized emotional manipulation wasn't working. "We'll sue for our share of Eleanor's estate. Garrett is entitled to half of everything. The house, the business, her life insurance policy. We know about the money, Alan." "Eleanor left everything to me," I said simply. The truth deflated her bluster for exactly 3 seconds. "That's impossible. Children always inherit. We're getting a lawyer." I pressed the security button as Brittany's voice reached dangerous levels. Mike Thompson returned with backup, their presence filling the office doorway. "I'm not leaving," Brittany screamed as security approached with professional calm. "This is theft. This is elder abuse. I'm calling the police." Her resistance was futile, but loud. The entire office heard her threats and accusations as she was physically escorted through the lobby, her designer heels dragging against the marble floor. Garrett's humiliation reached new depths as he watched his wife being removed from his former workplace like a common criminal. When the noise finally faded, he remained alone with me for one last attempt. "I'm all the family you have left, Dad." His voice dropped to a whisper, meant to break through my resolve with pure emotional manipulation. I looked at this person who'd once been the center of my universe, who'd once represented everything good and hopeful about the future. Eleanor's face smiled from the photo on my desk, and I could almost hear her voice giving me permission to speak the truth. "No, Garrett. You're just someone who used to be my son." The words hit him like a physical blow. For just a moment, I saw the little boy who'd once run into my arms after school, sticky with popsicle juice and full of stories about his day. Then the moment passed and only the entitled stranger remained. He left without another word. I addressed my concerned employees with professional calm, explaining that this was a personal matter that wouldn't affect business operations in any way. Most nodded with understanding. They'd witnessed Garrett's poor performance for years and weren't surprised by the decision. "Please ensure that Mrs. Foster is never allowed in this building again," I instructed security. Update all access protocols accordingly. Alone in my office, I felt my hands trembling slightly from adrenaline. The hardest part was over, but so much more lay ahead. I looked at Eleanor's photo beside my computer, her gentle smile seeming to approve of my actions. "I hope you understand, my love," I whispered to her image. "I hope this is what you would have wanted." Opening my laptop, I searched for estate planning attorneys in the area. It was time to accelerate the next phase of my plan. I scheduled an appointment with Robert Chen, the most respected probate attorney in 3 counties, for that same afternoon. Then I noticed Garrett's birthday marked on my desk calendar for next month, November 15th. 36 years old. I picked up my pen and crossed it out permanently, the ink bleeding through the paper like blood. The law offices of Chen Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of Millbrook's tallest building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Susquehanna River Valley, where Eleanor and I had spent countless Sunday afternoons, walking and dreaming about our future together. At 3:30 p.m., I sat across from Robert Chen's imposing mahogany desk, my leather briefcase containing Eleanor's will, insurance documents, and the financial records that would reshape my family's legacy forever. The afternoon sunlight slanted through those tall windows, illuminating shelves of law books and framed degrees that spoke of serious expertise. Robert had been our family attorney for 15 years, handling Eleanor's will, my business incorporation, and countless legal matters requiring both skill and discretion. More than that, he'd been a friend, someone who'd shared dinner at our table, who'd known Eleanor as more than just a client. "How are you holding up, Fletcher?" His voice carried genuine concern, not just professional courtesy. I declined his offer of coffee and settled into the leather chair that had witnessed so many important decisions over the years. "I need to make some significant changes to my estate planning, Robert." His expression shifted subtly into professional mode, though sympathy remained in his eyes. "Of course. Updating beneficiaries after Eleanor's passing is completely standard. No," I interrupted, opening my briefcase with deliberate care. "I'm removing Garrett entirely from my will." The words hit Robert like a physical blow. His professional composure wavered as he processed the full implications of what I was proposing. We weren't talking about adjusting percentages or adding charitable donations. I was talking about complete disinheritance. "Fletcher," he said carefully, leaning forward in his chair, "I need to understand what's driving this decision. This is extremely serious." I explained Garrett's absence from Eleanor's funeral with surgical precision, including his exact words about Brittany's birthday party being more important than his mother's final goodbye. Robert's face darkened with each detail, his own moral compass clearly outraged by what he was hearing. As Eleanor's friend and our family's trusted advisor, he understood the magnitude of Garrett's betrayal better than most. He'd seen Eleanor's devotion to our son, witnessed her pride at every milestone, her worry during his struggles. "I want to create a completely new will," I continued, my voice steady and resolved. "The primary beneficiary will be the Eleanor Foster Memorial Foundation." Robert leaned back in his chair, his legal mind already working through the complexities. "Fletcher, I'm legally obligated to ensure you're thinking clearly about this decision. The ramifications are enormous. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." I outlined my vision with the clarity of a man who'd spent sleepless nights planning every detail. Education scholarships for underprivileged children whose parents worked multiple jobs like Eleanor had. Cancer research funding in her memory, support for community gardens and literacy programs, all the causes Eleanor had championed during her too short life. "Garrett is to be explicitly excluded," I emphasized, along with any future descendants he might have. Robert's initial concern gradually transformed into professional admiration as I detailed the foundation structure. Moving company assets into an irrevocable trust would protect everything from potential lawsuits or challenges. I would retain complete control during my lifetime, with the foundation assuming ownership upon my death. We'll need to change all insurance beneficiaries as well, Robert noted, making detailed notes on his legal pad. This is extremely thorough planning, Fletcher. Are you certain about the house? I had decided the family home would be sold immediately after my death, with all proceeds donated to the foundation. Eleanor's jewelry collection, including her grandmother's pearls and the diamond bracelet I'd given her for our 20th anniversary, would be auctioned for charity. The only exception, Eleanor's simple gold wedding band, would be buried with me when my time came. What about Garrett's childhood belongings? Robert asked gently, his voice careful. Photo albums, school mementos, things that might have sentimental value? Donated or destroyed. I'm systematically removing every trace of Garrett from my life. Robert fulfilled his professional and ethical duty by questioning my mental state and decision-making capacity. My rational responses and detailed planning demonstrated clear thinking, not grief-induced impulse. He gradually shifted from concerned friend to admiring legal counsel. The foundation planning is actually quite brilliant, he admitted. Eleanor's memory will live on through education and community service. She would be incredibly proud of this legacy. The formal signing ceremony involved 2 legal witnesses from Robert's firm, senior partners who understood the gravity of what they were witnessing. My signature remained steady despite the magnitude of each decision. Robert explained that these documents took immediate legal effect. Garrett was now completely, legally, and irrevocably disinherited. I want Garrett to receive formal notice of this change, I instructed. Registered mail, signature required. I want him to understand exactly what he's lost and why. Additional legal protections followed in rapid succession. Power of attorney documents removing any authority Garrett might have claimed. Medical directives explicitly excluding him from healthcare decisions. A living will with specific instructions about my care, designating Robert and my longtime physician as decision-makers. Robert documented my mental competency with the thoroughness of a man who knew these documents might be challenged in court. Video testimony, psychiatric evaluation recommendations, witness statements from business associates, everything designed to prove I was making these decisions with full mental capacity and clear intent. Tomorrow I would visit every bank where Eleanor and I had accounts, updating beneficiaries on retirement funds, investment portfolios, and savings accounts that represented 40 years of careful financial planning. Robert offered to coordinate with all financial institutions to ensure nothing was overlooked. The foundation planning brings me more peace than I expected, I admitted as we concluded our business. Eleanor always believed education was the key to breaking cycles of poverty. These scholarships will help children whose parents sacrifice everything, just like we did. Eleanor would be incredibly proud of this foundation, Robert said sincerely as we shook hands. She always believed in helping others achieve their dreams. For the first time since Eleanor's death, I felt genuine satisfaction instead of cold determination. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. My transformation from grieving father to purposeful philanthropist felt complete and right. Walking to my car in the late afternoon sunshine, my phone showed 5 missed calls from Garrett and 3 from Brittany. The first signs that they were beginning to realize the seriousness of their situation. I deleted all the voicemails without listening and drove toward home, knowing the next phase of my plan was already in motion. The Millbrook Country Club's elegant lobby welcomed me with familiar luxury on Wednesday evening. Mahogany-paneled walls, crystal chandeliers imported from Austria, and oil portraits of founding members created an atmosphere of old money and established values. As treasurer of the monthly board meeting, I'd walked these hallowed halls for 18 years. 12 board members gathered around the polished conference table in the private dining room, discussing routine club business before our official meeting began. The scent of leather furniture and fresh coffee mingled with hushed conversations about recent local events, including, I suspected, Eleanor's funeral. William Hayes, our board president and CEO of Millbrook's largest bank, approached with the kind of genuine sympathy that only comes from decades of friendship. Fletcher, the memorial service was absolutely beautiful, he said, clasping my shoulder. Eleanor would have been so pleased with how the community came together. Those white daisies were perfect. They were always her favorites. Thank you for the magnificent floral arrangement, William, and thank you for serving as an honorary pallbearer. It meant more than you know. Patricia Morton, Eleanor's younger sister and a longtime club member, joined our conversation with worry etched across her face. Throughout the service, she'd been scanning the crowd with growing confusion. Fletcher, I kept looking for Garrett during the entire ceremony. I checked the parking lot, asked the funeral director where was he sick, did something happen? The question I'd been expecting hung in the air like incense. I paused, weighing my options, then decided that truth would serve Eleanor's memory better than polite fiction. Garrett chose not to attend his mother's funeral. The shocked silence spread through our small group like ripples on still water. Patricia's face went pale as winter sky. What do you mean he chose not to attend? Fletcher, that's impossible. Garrett loved Eleanor. He would never. I delivered Garrett's exact words about Brittany's birthday party being more important than his mother's funeral. The visible disgust on every board member's face told me everything I needed to know about their values. Values Garrett had abandoned in pursuit of his own selfish pleasures. William's wife Nancy had been eavesdropping from the hallway, and within 10 minutes of my revelation, she was making urgent phone calls from the ladies' lounge. The story reached the bridge club within the hour, then spread through Millbrook's interconnected social elite like wildfire through dry grass. I returned home that evening completely unaware of the social storm I'd unleashed. The first consequences struck Brittany the very next morning at her exclusive yoga studio on Elm Street. Mrs. Foster, said the instructor with icy politeness, we've had several complaints from other members. We prefer clients who demonstrate strong family values. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere. Brittany's confusion turned to growing anger as similar patterns emerged throughout the day. Her lunch reservation at Romano's, the upscale Italian place where she held court every Thursday, was mysteriously canceled. Kitchen problems, claimed the hostess, though the restaurant appeared to be operating normally. Saturday morning brought Garrett's most humiliating experience yet. His regular golf foursome at the country club made transparent excuses and left after only 3 holes. The pro shop manager, someone who'd known Garrett since he was 12 years old, quietly suggested he might be more comfortable playing elsewhere for a while. Garrett walked to his car alone, finally understanding that everyone in town knew about his betrayal of Eleanor's memory. Brittany's shopping experience at Henderson's boutique, where she'd spent thousands of dollars over the years, shattered her remaining illusions about their social standing. The sales associate's cold reception replaced years of warm, deferential service. I'm sorry, Mrs. Foster, but your account has been reviewed. We're no longer able to extend credit terms. Cash only from now on. The manager, Mrs. Henderson herself, emerged from the back office with barely concealed contempt. We prefer customers who understand the importance of family loyalty. I'm sure you understand. Kyle's professional isolation proved equally devastating. Job interviews scheduled through his network were canceled without explanation. Former business contacts stopped returning his calls entirely. A networking lunch at the Chamber of Commerce became awkward and brief as conversations died when he approached. The final straw came at Elite Hair Salon, where Brittany's regular monthly appointment was suddenly, mysteriously canceled. We're completely booked for the next 6 months, lied the receptionist, not even bothering to check the appointment book. In the waiting area, Brittany overheard other clients discussing her heartless husband who cared more about parties than his dying mother. She fled in tears, her social humiliation complete. The local newspaper's society columnist, Mrs. Dorothy Winston, published a subtle but devastating piece about the disappointing absence of certain family members at recent community events. Anyone who mattered in Millbrook understood exactly who she meant. At St. Matthew's Episcopal Church, where Eleanor had volunteered for the annual charity drive and taught Sunday school for 15 years, congregation members expressed open disapproval of Garrett and Brittany's behavior. Former friends avoided them at coffee hour, creating visible islands of isolation in the social hall. Garrett's desperate attempts to explain the situation fell on deaf ears throughout the community. His claims that I was exaggerating the story met with universal disbelief. Millbrook's tight-knit community had rendered their verdict with swift, merciless efficiency. Brittany's breakdown was inevitable and spectacular. She confronted Garrett in their kitchen with the fury of someone watching her carefully constructed world collapse. "Fix this," she screamed, throwing her rejected credit cards at his head. "I can't show my face anywhere in this town. Do you understand what you've done to us? To our reputation? To our future?" When Garrett admitted he didn't know how to repair the damage, she delivered her ultimate threat. "Fix this situation immediately or I'm leaving you. I will not be married to a social pariah. I will not live like this." I heard about these social consequences from various sources throughout the week, feeling deep satisfaction that justice was being served through natural community action rather than my direct intervention. Millbrook's values, family loyalty, respect for the dead, basic human decency, aligned perfectly with my own sense of right and wrong. Garrett had violated every principle that bound our community together, and that community was honoring Eleanor's memory by rejecting those who had dishonored it. The shunning was swift, comprehensive, and entirely deserved. My phone rang during breakfast on Monday morning, exactly 1 week after Eleanor's funeral. The bank manager's voice carried professional concern mixed with personal awkwardness. "Mr. Foster, this is David Harrison from First National. I'm calling about Garrett and Brittany's mortgage situation. They're now 60 days overdue on their payment, and the amount due is $2,400. You're still guaranteeing the loan, correct?" I paused, savoring the moment I'd been anticipating for days. "David, I'd like to schedule a meeting tomorrow morning to discuss changes to my financial guarantees." The silence that followed told me everything. David understood immediately that Garrett and Brittany's safety net was about to disappear entirely. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked through First National Bank's marble lobby, past portraits of founding members who'd built their fortunes on honest work and unwavering family values. David Harrison's corner office overlooked the river, where barges carried the commerce that had built Millbrook's prosperity for 6 generations. David's nervous demeanor was evident as he reviewed Kyle and Brittany's files spread across his mahogany desk. Mortgage papers, loan agreements, personal guarantees, and payment histories created a paper trail of financial dependency that was about to end forever. "Fletcher, I appreciate you coming in on such short notice," David said, his voice carrying uncomfortable formality. "As I mentioned, Garrett's mortgage is now 75 days delinquent. The total amount due, including late fees, is $23,800. I sat perfectly composed, hands folded calmly. "I understand you need my guaranteed payment to bring the account current." "Well, yes, as you've done for the past 4 months when they've fallen behind." David's assumption hung in the air like smoke before a fire. I reached into my briefcase and withdrew pre-drafted legal documents from Robert Chen's office. "I'm withdrawing my guarantee on all loans, effective immediately." The banker's face went ashen. His hands actually trembled as he reached for the documents. I don't understand, Fletcher. You've guaranteed this loan for 9 years. This will trigger immediate foreclosure proceedings." David frantically called the bank's legal department while I sat quietly, watching morning traffic cross the bridge where Eleanor and I had taken countless romantic walks during our courtship 40 years ago. The lawyer's voice through the speakerphone confirmed what David feared most. My withdrawal was perfectly legal and immediately binding. "This means we'll have to begin foreclosure proceedings within 30 days, David said weakly, his face pale with the implications. "I understand completely. Please expedite the process as much as legally possible." Meanwhile, across town, Garrett endured his 14th job interview in 3 weeks. The pattern had become depressingly predictable. Initial interest based on his resume, followed by sudden coldness once his identity became clear. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Foster," said the interviewer with barely concealed distaste. "We'll be in touch if anything suitable becomes available." The polite dismissal carried unmistakable finality. Garrett's growing desperation showed in his slumped shoulders as he walked to his aging Honda Civic, Eleanor's old car that he'd inherited when her illness made driving impossible. That same afternoon, Brittany discovered the credit card crisis during what should have been a routine shopping trip to Miller's department store. Her platinum card, the one with the $50,000 limit that had funded her lifestyle for years, was declined for a simple $300 purchase. "There must be some mistake," she told the embarrassed sales associate, her voice rising with panic and indignation. Her increasingly frantic call to the credit card company revealed the devastating truth. "Mrs. Foster, your cosigner, has withdrawn his guarantee on this account. The card is suspended pending full payment of the outstanding balance, which currently stands at $47,600. Brittany's public humiliation deepened as other customers watched her argue desperately with customer service through her cell phone, her voice becoming more shrill with each revelation. Kyle and Brittany returned home that evening to find their electricity disconnected. The utility company's notice, taped prominently to their front door, cited unpaid bills totaling $1,147 over 3 months. Garrett's failed negotiations with the customer service department ended abruptly when they discovered his recent employment termination and current unemployment status. Their first night by candlelight became a crash course in harsh reality. Brittany paced their dark living room in designer heels, the sound echoing against hardwood floors that would soon belong to the bank. "Fix this or I'm gone," she declared with venomous certainty. "I didn't marry into poverty, Garrett. I married into success, into security, into a family business. This is not what I signed up for." Garrett's weak attempts to blame me for being vindictive and having a breakdown met with her growing hysteria and rage. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Their garage sale of luxury items brought pathetically small returns compared to original costs. Wedding gifts that had cost guests hundreds of dollars sold for $20 or $30 to strangers who had no idea of their sentimental value. Former friends and neighbors drove slowly past their house, but didn't stop to browse or show support. The social exile was complete and merciless. Brittany watched in horror as her jewelry collection, diamond earrings, pearl necklaces, the sapphire bracelet Garrett had given her for their 5th anniversary, disappeared to bargain hunters and estate sale dealers who paid pennies on the dollar. The BMW's repossession provided the neighborhood's entertainment on a quiet Tuesday morning. Garrett's humiliation was complete as he removed personal items from the car under the repo man's impatient supervision, while neighbors peered from windows and whispered behind curtains. Brittany screamed at the tow truck driver, as if he were personally responsible for their financial collapse, her hysteria providing a spectacle that would fuel local gossip for weeks. I drove past their house that evening, observing the visible chaos with deep satisfaction. Boxes stacked on the front porch, a for sale sign on the lawn, cars coming and going as they liquidated their possessions piece by piece. This wasn't cruelty, it was consequence. Eleanor had always taught that actions have natural results, that choices carry weight. Garrett was finally learning those lessons that should have been absorbed in childhood. When Garrett called the next morning, begging for a face-to-face meeting and claiming he had something important to say, I agreed to meet him at Morrison Park the following afternoon, the same park where I'd taught him to ride a bicycle when he was 6 years old, back when he still looked at me with love instead of calculation. 6 months after my meeting with David Harrison at the bank, the county foreclosure auction took place on the courthouse steps under a gray November sky. I observed from across the street in my black sedan, watching as 1247 Maple Avenue, Garrett and Brittany's former dream home, went up for public sale. The county auctioneer read the legal description with bureaucratic precision, while a small crowd of real estate investors and curious onlookers gathered on the courthouse steps. The morning air was crisp with the promise of winter, and I could see my breath as I rolled down the window to hear better. Garrett and Brittany stood apart from the crowd like outcasts, Brittany's tears reflecting the weak autumn sunlight. Through my binoculars, I watched their final humiliation unfold with the satisfaction of a man seeing justice finally served. Opening bid is $295,000 for this 4-bedroom colonial with attached garage and landscaped yard. announced the auctioneer with practiced efficiency. A woman in a Navy business suit raised her hand confidently from the front of the crowd. Garrett frantically tried to identify her while whispering urgently to Brittany, his panic growing with each passing second. The bidding reached $322,000 with only 2 participants remaining, the mystery woman and a local contractor I recognized from various construction projects around town. When my attorney Robert Chen arrived and nodded discreetly to the woman in navy blue, Garrett's growing suspicion crystallized into shocked realization. "That's Dad's lawyer," he whispered to Brittany, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet crowd. He couldn't do this to us." Brittany's disbelief was audible even from my position across the street. "This is our home, Garrett. He can't steal our house." Garrett's desperate attempt to approach the mystery bidder was politely but firmly prevented by courthouse security, who'd been briefed to maintain order during the proceedings. $324,000, called the woman in navy blue with professional calm. "Going once, going twice. Sold." The auctioneer's gavel sealed their fate with a sharp crack that echoed off the courthouse walls. Garrett's legs gave out entirely and he sank to his knees on the concrete steps. Brittany's scream, "This is our home! You can't take our home!" provided a dramatic finale to their public humiliation. I exited my sedan and walked deliberately toward the courthouse steps, my presence causing Garrett to understand the complete scope of my 6-month strategy. The guarantee withdrawal, the perfect timing, the bid amount calculated to exactly match the outstanding mortgage balance. Everything had been orchestrated with business precision and legal expertise. The mystery bidder revealed herself as Sarah Mitchell, my trusted secretary of 12 years, acting as purchasing agent for the newly formed Mitchell Holdings LLC, a company I'd established specifically for this moment. Garrett stumbled toward me on shaking legs, his voice broken and barely audible. "Dad, how could you do this to us? This was Mom's favorite house. She loved the garden, the kitchen, the way the morning light came through the dining room windows." "I didn't do anything, Garrett," I replied with complete calm. "The bank did exactly what banks do when loans aren't paid." His desperate pleas about Eleanor's memory and her love for their home met my cold, factual response. "Eleanor's not here to see what you've become." Brittany's final attack came as a wild, desperate lunge toward me, screaming accusations about elder abuse and mental incompetence, while tears streamed down her carefully made-up face. Robert Chen smoothly stepped between us, documenting her hysteria with his phone camera, while courthouse security escorted her away from the scene. The entire spectacle provided perfect evidence of their true character for any future legal proceedings. 2 weeks later, the moving truck looked pitifully small against the backdrop of their former life. Brittany threw clothes into suitcases with violent anger, her movements sharp and desperate. Garrett carefully wrapped Eleanor's crystal vase, the last Christmas gift that connected him to his mother, in old newspaper. Their former neighbors watched the proceedings but offered no help, no sympathy, no kind words of support. The social exile was complete and apparently permanent. Brittany's ultimatum came that final evening as they prepared to leave Maple Avenue forever. "I can't live like this anymore, Garrett. I've been talking to Derek. You remember Derek Morrison from high school? He owns 3 restaurants now, lives in Pittsburgh, has a beautiful house in Shadyside." Her confession about reconnecting with her ex-boyfriend marked their marriage's true breaking point. "I married into wealth, Garrett. I married into security and status and a family business. I didn't sign up for this poverty, this humiliation, this social exile." Her final words cut deepest. "Your father was right about us all along. We never really loved you. We loved what you could provide." Garrett spent his final night alone in the empty house, walking through rooms that held 8 years of memories. Some good, most tainted now by the knowledge of how it all ended. In the kitchen drawer, forgotten behind takeout menus and expired coupons, he found Eleanor's hidden note. "My darling Garrett, always remember that your father and I love you more than our own lives. We gave you everything we had to give because we believed in the man you could become. Please don't forget us when we're gone. all our love forever, Mom." For the first time since Eleanor's death, genuine tears of regret fell as Garrett finally understood what he'd truly lost. Not just money or property or social status, but the unconditional love of two people who'd sacrificed everything for his happiness. I received the house keys from Sarah Mitchell the following Monday with quiet satisfaction, mixed with melancholy. My decision to renovate the property completely and donate it to a deserving family through the Eleanor Foster Memorial Foundation would complete the circle of justice Eleanor would have approved of. That evening, my phone rang one final time. Garrett's name appeared on the caller ID, calling from a payphone outside a budget motel, his cell service having been canceled weeks earlier. The phone rang 4 times in my quiet house before I let it go to voicemail. Whatever he had to say, whatever final plea or apology or threat he wanted to deliver, could wait. The final confrontation would happen on my terms, not his. Garrett arrived at my front door at 7:30 p.m. on the first truly cold evening of winter, 3 months after losing the house that Eleanor had loved so much. His finger hovered over the doorbell for a full minute while I watched from the living room window, debating whether this conversation was even worth having. When I finally opened the door, I didn't invite him inside. The November wind cut through his thin jacket. He'd sold his winter coat at the garage sale, and his appearance shocked me despite everything that had happened. Unshaven, gaunt, wearing a wrinkled shirt and jeans that hung loose on his diminished frame. He'd aged 10 years in 8 months, the stress and humiliation carving deep lines around his eyes and mouth. "Dad," he began, his voice shaking with cold and emotion. "I know I messed up terribly. I know I hurt you and dishonored Mom's memory, and I'm sorrier than I can ever express." He launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech about understanding his mistakes, about learning hard lessons about what really mattered in life. I listened passively from the doorway, studying his face for any sign of genuine change versus practiced manipulation. He described his current living situation, a studio apartment above Chen's laundromat on the east side of town, working night shifts at Murphy's gas station for minimum wage, watching Brittany marry Derek Morrison in a ceremony that made the society pages. "I've learned my lesson about what's really important," he claimed, his teeth chattering from the cold. "Family, love, the people who've always been there for me no matter what." When he suggested that I must be lonely in this big house and offered to move back in to be the son Mom wanted me to be, I recognized every manipulation technique he was employing. The same patterns, just delivered with more desperation. "When was your mother's birthday?" I asked suddenly, interrupting his prepared speech. Garrett paused, clearly caught off guard. June 15th? Wrong. Eleanor's birthday was April 22nd. What was her favorite flower? Roses? Another guess, another failure. Wrong again. Eleanor loved daisies, simple, cheerful daisies that she'd plant in every garden we'd ever had. What was her maiden name? Silence. Complete, telling silence. My realization was crystalline and final. Garrett had never really known Eleanor at all. For 35 years, he'd seen her as a convenient source of support and encouragement, never bothering to learn who she actually was as a person. His growing frustration with my questions revealed his true nature as the mask began to slip once again. "This is ridiculous, Dad. Why are you testing me like this? Just tell me what you want me to say so we can move forward." Eventually, his real purpose emerged with predictable clarity. "Okay, yes, I need help. The rent's due tomorrow, and I'm 3 days behind. The eviction notice is already posted. I need maybe $3,000 to get back on my feet." The same old song, just played in a different key. His promises to pay me back once I get established, and his suggestions that I was wealthy enough to help family members met with my stony silence. His last, most manipulative card involved Eleanor's memory. "Mom would be heartbroken to see us like this, Dad. She always believed in second chances, in family forgiveness. I miss her too. We both loved her, and she'd want us to reconcile." For just a moment, one brief, weak moment, I wavered. Eleanor had been the most forgiving person I'd ever known, always ready to see the best in people, always believing in redemption and second chances. Then I remembered what she'd really thought, what she'd confided to me in those final, painful weeks when the morphine made her brave enough to speak hard truths. I walked to Eleanor's nightstand and retrieved her private journal, the one where she'd recorded her deepest fears and most honest observations. Opening to a page I'd marked months ago, I read her own words aloud. "I'm terrified that we've raised a child who can only love what we provide, not who we are. Fletcher tries so hard to believe Garrett has simply lost his way, but I fear we've created someone incapable of genuine love. What if our generosity has been the cruelest gift of all?" Garrett's shocked silence told me everything I needed to know about the accuracy of Eleanor's assessment. "Your mother died knowing exactly what you are, Garrett," I said with calm finality. "She changed her will in the hospital, 3 days before she passed. She left you nothing because she knew you'd waste it on yourself instead of honoring her memory." Garrett's carefully constructed facade finally collapsed entirely. His angry threats about contesting the will and having me declared mentally incompetent revealed the vicious, entitled nature he'd hidden behind practiced charm for decades. "You're a bitter, crazy old man," he snarled, his true voice finally emerging. "I hope you die alone in this house, talking to pictures and living in the past. You've destroyed your own family out of spite and jealousy." His final cruel words gave me complete satisfaction, not because they hurt, but because they proved beyond any doubt that Eleanor and I had been right about him all along. I stepped back and closed the door quietly while he was still speaking. Garrett pounded on it for several minutes, his rage echoing through the quiet neighborhood while I walked calmly to the kitchen and made chamomile tea as if nothing unusual had happened. When his car finally drove away, the engine making concerning noises that suggested expensive repairs in his near future, I sat in Eleanor's favorite armchair, holding her journal, feeling more at peace than I had since the day she died. Looking up at our wedding photo on the mantelpiece, I spoke quietly to her image. "It's finished, my love. Justice has been served." 1 year later, I walked through Riverside Cemetery on a brilliant May morning, carrying fresh white daisies to Eleanor's grave. The oak trees were full of new green leaves, spring flowers bloomed along the walking paths, and birds sang with the joy of another season beginning. I looked healthier and more at peace than I had in years. Regular exercise, good nutrition, and the satisfaction of meaningful work had restored both my physical strength and emotional equilibrium. Kneeling beside Eleanor's polished granite headstone, I arranged the fresh daisies while speaking softly about the Eleanor Foster Memorial Foundation's remarkable first year of operation. 25 full scholarships awarded to deserving students whose parents worked multiple jobs like Eleanor had. $300,000 donated to cancer research in her honor. A new community center dedicated on what would have been her 61st birthday, where children from working families received free tutoring and meals. "Garrett works at Murphy's gas station on Route 6, I reported matter-of-factly. "His divorce was finalized last month. Brittany's living in Pittsburgh now, married to someone who can provide the lifestyle she always wanted." I felt no satisfaction in his continued struggles, only the peace that comes from seeing natural consequences play out exactly as they should. Leaving the cemetery, I stopped at Morning Glory Diner, the same place where Eleanor had worked double shifts 30 years ago to support our family. Garrett was behind the counter wearing a stained uniform, looking older and more worn than his 36 years should have allowed. Our eyes met across the diner with the shock of unexpected encounter. His recognition was immediate, followed by visible shame and something that might have been genuine humility. "How are you doing, Dad?" His voice carried a quality I'd never heard before. Not manipulation or entitlement, but simple, honest inquiry. "I'm well, thank you," I replied, treating him like any service worker deserving of basic courtesy but nothing more. "I know sorry isn't enough," he said quietly, his hands shaking slightly as he poured my coffee. "I know I can never undo what I did, what I put you and Mom through. No, it isn't enough." For the first time in his life, Garrett's acceptance seemed genuine rather than strategic. "I understand now what I really lost. It was never about the money, was it?" You and Mom just wanted me to love you for who you were, not what you could provide. Your mother wanted that, yes. Garrett's tears seemed real as they fell onto the diner's worn counter. I did love you both. I didn't know how to show it except by taking what you offered. I thought that's what family was. People who give you things when you need them. I did what I had to do, I explained calmly. Eleanor would have approved of every decision I made. I have no regrets about any of it. I know, Garrett accepted with quiet resignation. I deserved all of it. The job loss, the house, the social exile, losing Brittany. All of it was exactly what I earned through my choices. Yes, you did. When Garrett asked if there might ever be a way back to having some kind of relationship, I answered with complete honesty. I don't know, Garrett. Maybe. You'd have to prove you've really changed, not with words or promises, but through your actions over time. Years of actions, not weeks or months. I described my new life with genuine contentment. Volunteer work at the community center 3 days a week, teaching basic financial literacy to young parents. New friendships with other volunteers who shared my values of service and genuine care for others. Sunday dinners with the Rodriguez family, whose daughter Maria had received our foundation's first nursing scholarship. Weekly coffee with Grace Henderson, a kind widow from St. Matthews who'd lost her husband the same year I lost Eleanor. My life was full of purpose and authentic relationships built on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. For the first time since Eleanor's death, I was genuinely happy rather than simply surviving. Visiting Maria Rodriguez at the community college brought me the deepest satisfaction I'd felt since Eleanor's passing. Maria was everything we'd hoped our scholarship recipients would be: hardworking, grateful, determined to break cycles of poverty through education. Mr. Foster, she said, her eyes bright with tears of gratitude. I never could have afforded nursing school without the Eleanor Foster Memorial Scholarship. My mom works 3 jobs just to keep us housed and fed. This scholarship isn't just changing my life. It's changing my whole family's future. Her handwritten letter to Eleanor's memory, posted on the foundation's website, had moved me to tears when I first read it. Mrs. Foster, I never got to meet you, but I feel your love through your husband's generosity. I promise to honor your memory by becoming the best nurse I can be, by caring for others the way you cared for your family. Thank you for believing in me. This was Eleanor's true legacy. Not the entitled son who'd squandered every opportunity, but the dozens of deserving young people who would lift themselves and their families through education, funded by her memory. Driving home past Garrett's former house on Maple Avenue, I saw how the Hendricks family had transformed it into something Eleanor would have loved. Mr. Hendricks waved from the garden Eleanor had once tended, now filled with vegetables that would feed his family of 5. Children played in the backyard where Garrett had once played. But these children understood the value of what they had. The house embodied everything Eleanor had valued: family togetherness, gratitude for simple pleasures, hard work rewarded with security and love. It was exactly what she would have wanted her former home to become. That evening, I prepared dinner in the kitchen I'd once shared with Eleanor, setting one place at the table without sadness or loneliness. The silence was peaceful now rather than oppressive, filled with the satisfaction of a life being lived with purpose and integrity. My phone rang with Grace calling about our weekend plans to visit the new community garden we'd helped establish. I smiled, the first genuine happiness I'd felt since Eleanor's death, born not from revenge or justice served, but from the simple joy of building something positive with another person who shared my values. Standing in Eleanor's garden at sunset, pruning her rose bushes that had somehow survived and flourished despite my neglect, I felt the deep peace of a man who had fought for what was right and won. The roses would bloom again next spring, just as Eleanor's memory would continue blooming through the lives we were changing. My absolute certainty that I'd honored my wife's memory and values brought complete satisfaction. Every decision had been guided by love, not the enabling, destructive love that had created Garrett's entitlement, but the tough love that Eleanor had been too kind to enforce herself. Going to bed early in the house that now truly felt like home again, I slept soundly for the first time in 2 years. My dreams were filled with Eleanor smiling and saying, "You did the right thing, Fletcher. I'm proud of you for having the courage I couldn't find." Justice had been served, but more importantly, love had been properly defined and defended. Eleanor's memory lived on, not in the son who dishonored it, but in the community of grateful families whose lives were being transformed by her posthumous generosity. In the end, this wasn't a story about revenge or punishment. It was about the difference between authentic love and transactional relationships, between family bonds built on mutual respect and those corrupted by financial dependency. Eleanor had worried that we'd raised a son incapable of genuine love. I'd proven her wrong by demonstrating what real love looks like. Strong enough to say no, brave enough to enforce consequences, and generous enough to build something beautiful from the ashes of disappointment. Rest in peace, my beloved Eleanor. Your legacy lives on in every scholarship awarded, every family helped, every life changed by the foundation that bears your name. That's the inheritance that truly matters, not money or property, but the continuing impact of a life lived with love, sacrifice, and unwavering values. If this story moved you the way it moved me, please hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories that will challenge how you think about family, love, and what we owe each other. In the comments below, tell me what you would have done in Fletcher's situation. Was he too harsh? Or did Garrett get exactly what he deserved? And remember, the most powerful inheritance we can leave isn't money or property, but the values we instill and the love we show through our actions, not just our words. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is refuse to enable behavior that dishonors everything we've sacrificed to provide. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, hold your loved ones close, but love them enough to expect them to be worthy of your sacrifice.